My name is Takeshi Renji, and I am a samurai. Not a soldier of war today, not a killer, but a man who lives by the code, a man shaped by the blade, by discipline, by centuries of tradition. I woke before the sun, as always. The air was still and cool, filled with the faint scent of pine and damp earth. Outside my sliding paper doors, the crows had not yet begun their morning chorus. The house was silent, only the soft breath of my wife in the next room and the occasional creak of old wood reminded me that I was not alone in this world. I sat in seiza for a moment longer, savoring the stillness. My katana rested nearby, its lacquered sheath catching what little light the lantern cast. Before anything else, before rice, before words, there is ritual. I approached the kamidana, the household shrine, and bowed deeply. I lit a small offering of incense, watching the smoke curl into the early light. My prayers were brief but sincere. Health for my family, clarity of mind, and the strength to live with honor. Soon after, I dressed in my gi and hakama. The fabric, worn yet clean, held the scent of cedar from where it was stored. I stepped outside and felt the cold kiss of the morning breeze on my face. The mountains in the distance were painted with mist. Beyond the rice paddies and the rows of village homes, the forest stood like a silent sentinel. My feet carried me to the dojo, a modest structure just behind the main house. It belonged to my father once, and his father before him. Now, it is mine to tend and to teach. I opened the doors and was greeted by the familiar creak of the tatami mats. I took a deep breath and bowed to the kamidana in the dojo, acknowledging the spirits and the ancestors who guide my path. Training begins alone. First, the breath, slow, measured, like the waves of the ocean. Then, the movement. I practice kata after kata, each cut of my sword deliberate, each step precise. My body remembers what the mind sometimes forgets: balance, control, intention. The bamboo targets will come later. For now, I seek harmony within myself. When the students arrive, boys from the village, and sometimes men who wish to reclaim their discipline, I greet them with a nod. We begin with cleaning the dojo together, as is tradition. It teaches humility, that the place where we train is sacred not because of what it is, but because of how we treat it. The clack of wooden bokken echoes through the morning. I guide them through the basics: posture, stance, focus. There is no need for shouting or harshness. Discipline is not born from fear. It is forged in respect, repetition, and a deep understanding of purpose. After training, I walk through the village. The air has warmed, and the scent of grilled fish and miso broth drifts from the homes. I bow to the elders and speak briefly with the blacksmith, who is repairing a damaged tsuba for one of my students. Children run barefoot past me, chasing each other with laughter, their wooden swords clashing as they imagine battles of honor. At the market, I buy rice and vegetables and stop to help an old man whose cart has lost a wheel. He recognizes me and bows deeply, calling me sensei, though I've never taught him. I help him without words. It is enough. When I return home, my wife has prepared tea. We sit beneath the eaves in silence, watching the trees sway. Her presence is like water, calm, supportive, essential. We speak little, but we do not need to. The day stretches ahead of us, and already it feels full. The sun had barely risen above the bamboo grove when I stepped onto the dojo floor. My wooden sandals clacked softly against the polished boards as I bowed before the kamidana, the household shrine. There, incense already burned, curling upward like the breath of the ancestors. I offered a short prayer, not for victory in battle, but for clarity, humility, and the strength to honor my name. My student, Masaru, was already waiting, kneeling perfectly still, blade across his knees, eyes steady. He was only 15, but he carried himself with the solemn weight of someone twice his age. I remember being like that, long ago, before blood stained my hands, before I learned what the sword truly meant. We began with kata, the traditional forms, movements passed down from teacher to student over generations, like whispers echoing through time. Each step, each cut, each breath, perfect, or it should be. When Masaru faltered, I did not raise my voice. A true warrior learns more from silence than from scolding. Instead, I showed him again, slowly, deliberately, how to step, how to hold tension in the blade, how to strike like it is the final blow of your life. Hours passed. The dojo, once cool, had grown hot under the rising sun. Sweat dripped from our brows and soaked our GI. But still, we moved. A samurai's training is endless. You do not practice to fight, you practice to become. Later, we moved to sparring. Bokken in hand, we circled each other, not as teacher and student, but as warriors. He struck first, a bold overhead swing, but I met it with a sideways parry, turning his strength aside. He recovered quickly. He's improving, too quickly. A part of me is proud. Another part worries for his future. After the bout, we bowed to one another, mutual respect forged in sweat and wood. I placed my hand on his shoulder and said, "The sword must cut more than flesh. It must cut through fear, through ego, through doubt. When it does, only then are you ready." He bowed again, deeper this time. I think he understood. By midday, I was seated with my family beneath the veranda. My wife, Aiko, had prepared rice, pickled radish, and grilled mackerel. A simple meal, but in its warmth, I found peace. My daughter, Emiko, giggled as she fed bits of fish to the house cat. I watched her with a quiet ache in my chest. She reminded me of her mother when we were young, so full of life, untouched by the shadows I carry. But peace in this world is fleeting. As we ate, a messenger arrived. A boy on foot, his kimono torn, his face streaked with dust. He bowed deeply and handed me a scroll. The seal was unmistakable, the lord of our province, my master. I read the message once, then again. Bandits had struck a nearby village. The local militia was overwhelmed. My presence was requested. No, required, immediately. Aiko met my eyes. She said nothing, but in that silence, I heard everything. Fear, pride, sorrow, acceptance. I stood and returned to my quarters. There, I opened the weapon chest, lined with oiled silk and cedar. My katana, ancestral and unforgiving, rested inside. I wrapped the tsuka with care, the grip molded to my palm like an old friend. The blade gleamed even in shadow. It had not drawn blood in months. That would change before the sun set. The road to the village twisted through pine-covered hills and muddy footpaths. I traveled alone. A true samurai does not hesitate, even when the enemy is unknown. My armor, layered and lacquered black, creaked softly as I rode. Over my shoulder rested my yumi, the longbow, and beside me, the blade. It was not fear I felt, but stillness, like the quiet before a storm, like the moment between drawing and cutting. By the time I arrived, smoke already curled into the sky. The village was small, no more than 30 homes built along a narrow river. But today, it looked like a battlefield. Doors shattered, fire smoldering in the fields. A woman screamed behind a collapsed wall. Somewhere, a baby cried. Somewhere else, silence. Too much silence. I dismounted, my eyes scanning every rooftop, every shadow. Then I heard it, movement beyond the shrine. I drew my sword. It slid from the sheath with a sound like breath. A single motion. Years of practice reduced to one fluid truth. The first man came at me wildly, yelling, axe overhead like an animal. His clothes were torn, but he wore armor stolen from a guard. I stepped aside, clean and fast. My blade cut across his ribs, a red arc across the air. He fell without a word. Another rushed from behind, spear aimed for my back. He thought I hadn't heard him. I turned just enough to redirect, enough to break his rhythm. My blade struck twice, once to disarm, once to finish. His body hit the earth like a sack of rice. The others hesitated. Good. Fear is a weapon too. There were 4 left, 2 younger, 2 older, all hungry, all desperate. I saw it in their eyes. They weren't warriors, just men who had nothing. And yet, they'd killed, burned, made orphans. The sword doesn't judge, but I do. They attacked together. It was chaos, mud flying, blades clashing, fire crackling behind us, but I was faster, calmer. I moved not like a man, but like a shadow drawn by the sword itself. One after another they fell, not because I hated them, but because it was necessary. Duty demands sacrifice. And then it was quiet again. Only the wind remained, and the river. The villagers began to emerge slowly. A child peeked from behind a cart. An old man wept at the edge of the temple. A woman clutched a cloth doll. Its head burned. I sheathed my sword. Blood dripped from my fingers. A young boy, no older than Emiko, approached and bowed. "Thank you, samurai," he whispered. I nodded, but said nothing. What thanks could ever undo the suffering? By sunset, I was home again. Aiko met me at the gate, her eyes red but strong. She said nothing as she helped remove my armor. Her hands trembled only once, when she touched the dried blood on my shoulder. Emiko ran to me, hugging my leg. "Did you fight monsters, father?" she asked. I looked down at her innocent face. For a moment, I saw one of the bandits in her eyes. He had a daughter too. I was sure of it. "No," I said gently. "The real monsters don't always look like monsters." That night, I sat alone in the garden, staring at the moon. Being a samurai is not about glory. It is about burden, about making choices others cannot, about standing between peace and chaos, and accepting the cost. I am Takeshi, and I am a samurai.